This film, based on true events, begins in August 2010. A criminal journalist named Diana Henriques arrives at a prison to visit a complicated man, the hero of her new article, a financial mogul named Bernard Madoff, serving time for a financial fraud worth a whopping $65 billion. He doesn't answer questions about his crimes except those that were asked at the court hearing. He is smart and calm.
Bernard L. Madoff, inmate number 6172-7054.
The story moves to December 2008, New York. Outside the window, a financial crisis comparable to the Great Depression is gaining momentum. Bernard runs his own firm, a large investment fund. Bernard calls his two sons and brother for a conversation to discuss bonus payments to employees during difficult times for the world. But it was a good year for the fund, and Bernard doesn't think anything will change in the last month. One of the sons says bonuses should be paid in February, but Bernard doesn't listen and replies that bonuses will really help employees. After all, they all need to take care of their families. However, something is actually eating at him, and he responds.
I have to talk to you.
You can. You know you can.
I know.
Together with his sons, he goes home to hold a family council and confess that in fact, the entire fund is one continuous scam, an ordinary financial pyramid. And now he has no money to pay debts and loans. Therefore, Bernard plans to turn himself into the police. At first, the sons started yelling at their father, but despite the shock from such news, the family continues looking for a way out. Mark, one of Bernard's sons, turns to his father-in-law, a seasoned lawyer, Martin London, who also invested a large sum of money in the fund. The lawyer immediately advises the sons to turn in their father, otherwise they'll go down as accomplices. After all, the money Bernard wants to give to his children and employees is stolen.
So what are you saying? We have to turn him in?
You don't turn him in, you're an accomplice.
The next morning, FBI agents visit Bernard's home. They politely ring and simply knock on the door. After a brief conversation, it turns out the businessman started the scam back in the 70s, ordering him to hand over everything in his pockets, as well as his tie and shoelaces. The FBI agents arrest the old man right in front of his wife, Ruth. At the station, using his right to a phone call, Bernard calls his lawyer, Ike Sorkin, to whom he admits that he single-handedly built a financial pyramid, and for the last 15 years, all completed deals were fake. Parallel to this, the feds interrogate Mark and other relatives to find out who else was involved in the fraud. However, the sons and brother deny to the last that they knew anything about Bernard's schemes. The situation is aggravated by the fact that during his career, the fraudster became almost a national hero for American business. Many even idolized him. During Bernard's own interrogation, the feds are interested in the mysterious 17th floor, where Bernard didn't let anyone from the family, and where allegedly private consultations with high-ranking individuals took place. After the interrogation, we're shown that very 17th floor, where many people are fussing with papers. The main person there was Frank DePascali, who knew perfectly well what he and the boss were actually doing.
I was in my office, and I got a telephone call.
When he was called and warned that the FBI was in the building, Frank decided to go up and find out why they were there. But when he learned that Bernard told them everything, he tried to delete all data from the computer. The feds didn't know about this floor and weren't even looking for it. But when Frank was spotted, they learned about the secret floor. When the agents entered the office, Frank didn't have time to delete the data.
FBI, do not touch that computer. I said move away from the computer!
From Eleanor Squillari, another employee, agents learned that the day before Bernard's arrest, his wife Ruth transferred $10 million to her account. She wanted to spend this money on bail, but to release Bernard from custody, 4 guarantor signatures are needed. Ruth calls her son, but Mark refuses to deal with his father and hangs up when his mother asks for help over the phone. The rest of the family also refuses. Only the brother supports the fraudster. With 2 guarantors, Bernard is transferred to house arrest with an electronic bracelet. Arriving home, he sees his wife crying from the suddenly changed paradigm of their life. The man remembers how he met her as a teenager more than 50 years ago. The story moves to summer 2008 before the arrest. Bernard is preparing for his son's wedding and carefully controls how the waiters set the table. Soon guests arrive, and socializing, fun, and dancing begin. Parallel to this, we're shown how the FBI interrogates all participants in the gray scheme.
Your accounts at Madoff Securities had a total of approximately $50 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At the wedding, Bernard immediately warns his daughter-in-law that his son is no rich man, so she shouldn't have any illusions about his financial situation. But she apparently didn't take his word for it. Later, he talks to Mark, who says he and his wife have their eye on a luxurious house for $6.5 million. But Bernard seems not to care. He scolds a waiter for serving lobster incorrectly. Then he convinces Mark to eat specifically that. It's prestigious. The money is paid, and as Colin Farrell's agent said, slipping him a new script, you can't refuse lobster. In the evening, the sons discuss what to do with the company if something suddenly happens to their father. To all questions, the old man answers that Assistant Frank will figure it out himself, and they shouldn't get into this business. After all, only Frank knows the truth. And when the offspring insist, he starts cursing. Later, we're shown our time, as Bernard talks to the journalist. The old man himself admits to her that he didn't try to run away with the money because he didn't consider himself a thief. He simply took money from the same swindlers who wanted to lazily multiply their wealth while doing nothing. December 15, 2008, deceived investors arrive at Madoff's fund office. But police won't let them in. A search is underway. Due to the arrest of the fund's accounts and the revealed fact of actual bankruptcy, many people learned that all their savings simply vanished. Some of them committed suicide.
They remember exactly where they were and what they were doing when they learned they were ruined.
The very fact of the exposed pyramid stirred up the media. Bernard began to be mocked by popular TV comics. Paparazzi constantly chase family members, hoping to snatch a piece of sensation. Due to negative publicity, Ruth is refused service at the hair salon, where she had been a regular customer for 15 years, and neighbors in the elevator stop saying hello. Her loneliness is aggravated by the fact that her sons don't communicate with her, and her husband is about to be imprisoned for life. From an excess of feelings, she even threatens to kill herself. The main thing is not to resurrect again when cats start gnawing on the body. The spouses collect all the sleeping pills in the house into one cup and swallow the pills. They lie in bed and fall asleep to a working television where Judy Garland is singing. In the middle of the night, Bernard hears his granddaughter's voice and goes to the living room where sons Mark and Andrew are sitting. He tries to apologize to them, but it's just a hallucination. Next, Bernard sees his accountant. The old man wanders through the office with burning monitors, remembering the people thanks to whom he rose to the top of the financial business through deception and fraud. Then he dreams of paparazzi blinding him with camera flashes. Among them is an angry investor who shoots the old man until he falls to the floor. In the morning, Ruth will find Bernard on the floor. They're still alive, as the dose of sleeping pills turned out to be insufficient. During the day, the spouses watch on television a speech by analyst Harry Markopoulos, who 10 years ago warned the Securities Commission that Bernard was a fraud. The story moves to summer 2005, when a commission representative requests Bernard's fund account number for verification, as well as comments on the analyst's article. Bernard, feeling his authority, scolds the commission, and regarding the article, he responds that they portrayed him too fat in it. And he kicks the inspector out of the office, but as he's leaving, the inspector still insists on disclosing the account number, and Bernard gives the number, hoping they simply won't call.
646. 646.
If the commission had checked the data, the financial pyramid would have been exposed immediately, but incompetent or uninterested people didn't do this. And this was their mistake many years ago. Bernard admits to the journalists that, with such corruption and incompetence in the country, he could have continued making money. Even the 2008 crisis wouldn't have stopped him. But he simply got tired and decided to end it all when, on the eve of the crisis, banks began withdrawing their investments from the fund. Nevertheless, he still tried to get out of the hole by attracting new investments, including from old acquaintances, bloated bankers hitting on younger girls. This happened during one of the parties where Bernard was able to attract $400 million. Luck smiles on him. Due to his impeccable reputation, younger financiers, seeing how the rich invest in Bernard's fund, panic and want to invest money in Madoff's fund, so as not to lose out in the raging crisis.
275. $300 million. How far do we gotta go? Just tell me.
Skillfully manipulating, Bernard gradually raises the investment amount to what he needs, after which he supposedly does his savior a favor. However, by November 2008, more and more clients want to withdraw their investments from reserves that don't actually exist. Bernard is nervous, and even at a family dinner, snaps at his 8-year-old granddaughter, who bothers him with questions about Wall Street.
Well, I've got so many other goddamn things I'm worried about on Wall Street, and this kid's asking me about how Wall Street is. Shut up and eat your food.
Dad!
Stop. What's wrong with you?
When Mark offers his father help, he, out of old habit, avoids answering, playing the indignation card. Returning to the office in the morning, Bernard continues working on old clients, promising tons of profit later if they invest now. However, in conditions of a ripening crisis, not everyone is ready to risk their own money, so they refuse him, justly suspecting some fraud. The old man confers with Frank. It turns out that out of $1.5 billion in the account, almost $1 billion has already been withdrawn by one bank, and another is claiming the rest. To keep the fund afloat, new investors are urgently needed. Bernard continues calling potential clients, gradually filling the piggy bank at the expense of the most trusting. From stress, his back seizes up. Lying on the floor to ease the pain, the old man talks to Andrew. His son wants to rent an office away from his dad and start his own business, but in current conditions, supporting his offspring becomes expensive. So Bernard refuses, not explaining the true reasons. Returning to our time, when the fraud trial hearing is a few days away, Mark decides to write a book about his father and his business, in which he would tell why the family didn't suspect Bernard was an economic criminal. Later, he and his brother and wives discuss what will happen when their father pleads guilty. The sons want to stop being considered accomplices, but for this they need a full trial, which won't happen if Bernard simply confesses. And the trial is not profitable for many influential clients with whom the old man worked for many years. At the hearing, Bernard diligently pleads guilty to all counts.
How do you now plead to count 3, the charge of mail fraud? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
After which, he's imprisoned again, pending sentencing. In prison, only his wife visits him from all relatives. He says he's in the special regime wing, where in the neighboring cell sits a terrorist who killed many people. At this time, Mark is pursued by journalists to ask about his father. He runs away from them, leaving his wife with children on the street, as they're not too interesting to the press. This fact becomes the cause of a quarrel. In addition, Andrew's wife is unhappy that Mark sends them links to offensive articles about the family and insists they need to socially distance from the brother. But everything gets worse when a former trader who worked for Bernard for 7 years meets Andrew on the street. Because of the firm's reputation, now no one will hire him. The trader accuses Andrew of being in on it with his father and starts a fight. On television, analysts say that Bernard's sons and brother must have known about his schemes because the fund was a family business, and the billions that were supposedly in the accounts still haven't been found. At the repeat hearing, witnesses testify against Bernard, calling on the court to pay attention to his family.
I am responsible for a great deal of suffering and pain. I understand that.
The robbed people believe the fraudster is simply covering for his family. At the end of the hearing, the judge passes sentence, 150 years in prison.
Shall be and hereby is sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 150 years.
Given the defendant's advanced age, the penitentiary system gives him a break. He doesn't have to serve the entire term, but serves as long as he can before he dies. And so, he doesn't do anything to himself. He'll be under close watch. After the sentence, Ruth moves to Florida to her sister. The journalist, through logical reasoning, expresses suspicion that the sons were still involved in his schemes, because Bernard's own testimony emphasizes concern for family. But had an accident happened to them a little earlier, the sons would have ultimately been left holding the bag in the largest financial pyramid in history. However, the old man insists that proving their participation in the scam is impossible. The investigation began selling off the Madoff family's property to collect sufficient funds by fall 2009 to compensate for damages. Not to everyone, of course, but only to the most influential banks. Mark's wife, vacationing in Florida, is unhappy that even after her father-in-law's imprisonment, he prevents them from enjoying life, as his affairs still haunt them. Mark himself continues to track angry articles on the internet and discuss them with loved ones. However, they got so tired of his constant whining that they simply stopped picking up the phone when he called. Unable to contain the accumulating emotions, Mark one night sends his wife a bunch of strange messages. Worried, she calls him, but he doesn't answer. The wife asks the lawyer to check on Mark at home. Reaching the apartment, the lawyer finds him hanging in a noose. Unable to withstand public pressure, Bernard's son committed suicide, leaving his small son alone in his crib. Ruth receives her first call in several years from her son Andrew, but only to learn that the number of her children has sharply decreased. Bernard, in prison, is allowed to watch a program where Martin London reads a letter about Mark's death, in which the lawyer blames the prisoner.
This is what happens when you destroy your sons by your life of deceit.
Right after this, Ruth visits her husband in prison for the last time. She says Andrew will only allow her to communicate with her grandchildren if she cuts all ties with him. Finally, Bernard recalls that when they were young and he worked as a lifeguard, money didn't worry them. But then, apparently, something changed. Andrew was soon diagnosed with cancer. After a course of chemotherapy in 2013, he gives a lecture at the Institute talking about his father's case. He admits he grew up in a wealthy family, so he didn't speak out with denials of his involvement, saying it would look hypocritical. Andrew admits his father is dead to him. And that same fall, he himself dies of cancer. Learning of this, Bernard calls his wife, but she doesn't pick up. Time after time, the man dials her number, but only hears ringing in response.
You have reached this recording in error. Please check the number and...
Concluding the interview, Bernard asks the journalist if she considers him a real villain sociopath, similar to a serial killer. The camera zooms in on his face, eyes without a drop of remorse, but no answer followed. This is where the film ends, like the savings of Bernard Madoff's investors in December 2008. Let me remind you, this was a real story.